Number 10, Iron Man. Now you're probably thinking, yeah, okay, I see what you're doing, Jack. Starting off with an easy one, and you're absolutely right. But I'm not sure if you know exactly which Iron Man redesign I'm going to be talking about. When I think of redesigns, I normally think of these huge changes, but in this case, even the smallest change can have a big impact. Iron Man may have more redesigns than any other character besides the Wasp, so he obviously has had his share of bad looks, but nothing is as unsettling as the time he had a nose on his helmet. The smooth face mask that we're all familiar with was the norm for a while until 1974's The Invincible Iron Man number 68, when he for some reason showed up with a new mask that accentuated his schnoz. Now in this issue, Iron Man explains that the new look will help him strike fear into the hearts of his enemies, and it definitely works because he looks way more menacing, but I see no other benefit unless he's trying to just, I don't know, sniff out his enemies. Take some time to look at it for yourself and see if you agree with me when I say I'm glad this one didn't stick around for too long. Number 9, Nightwing. Dick Grayson, the original Robin, has probably one of the funniest designs on this list today based solely on appearance alone, mostly because it's so dated. Hopefully we're all familiar with the current Nightwing suit, you know, the skin-tight black suit with a simple bluebird design that covers his chest and a portion of his arms. Well, the one that I want to mention is actually his original costume that I personally call Disco Nightwing, and once I explain the costume, I'm sure you'll agree with me. When Dick set out on his own as a crime-fighting vigilante, he decided to model his suit after his late father's trapeze costume, which is super sweet in theory. The result, however, was a hilariously awful dark blue jumpsuit with a massive Robin Eggs blue collar that was popped and yellow accents that were supposed to look like feathers. I've also spent a ton of time trying to figure out exactly why there was a triangle midsection there, but I don't know, maybe it's to showcase his abs. Honestly, who knows? Either way, I'm happy we got a couple redesigns that eventually got us to the suit that we see today. Check out this original costume for yourself and let me know if you're digging it as much as I do. Number 8, Star-Lord. Taking a short break from looking at costumes, which I'm very glad were redesigned in this case by the way, let's talk about the 5 retcons that happened with Star-Lord. Originally, Star-Lord's stories were set in the future, and Peter Quill is also born on a very special astrological date, and his mother was killed by some rogue aliens, and then he devoted his life to becoming an astronaut. He encountered the Master of the Sun, at which point he became the Star-Lord, complete with a special gun. Chris Claremont and John Byrne revealed that the reason Quill's mother was killed by aliens was because his father was an alien, and that Quill was actually the heir to a throne of an entire alien planet. Doug Munch then added a bizarre retcon where it was revealed that the Master of the Sun was secretly one of the aliens who had killed Quill's mother. Then Keith Giffen then retconned that whole set in the future aspect of Star-Lord's origin and brought him squarely into the Marvel Universe, getting rid of that whole half-alien plot point in the process. Brian Michael Bendis then retconned the origins so that Star-Lord never met the Master of the Sun, and the special gun was just a gift from his alien father, and he became an interstellar hero all on his own. Recently, Sam Humphries roughly combined the origins, with Quill still being an astronaut, only now he stole a ship and ended up encountering space pirates who introduced him into the world of space adventure. Check out all these origins for yourself, starting with Star-Lord's first appearance in 2004's Thanos, number 8. Number 7, Batgirl. Throughout the years, Batgirl was portrayed more often than not as the cutesy kid sister sidekick kind of character. She was a purple-clad add-on to the Bat family with red hair streaming out from underneath a cowl with some truncated horns. She was, in short, an afterthought, a Batman light in every form, including the name. Then came the speechless martial artist Cassandra Cain, the 4th Batgirl, who brought a violent, no-nonsense style to Batgirl, and her costume very much reflected that. She looked like an assassin, a true threat to the criminal underworld that would inspire fear and awe. Cloaked in black with only a yellow outline of the iconic bat symbol on her chest, she was a weapon of her own. The sewn-up mask, reflecting her inability to talk, made her all the more menacing, and during her time as Batgirl she went toe-to-toe against Deathstroke while teamed up with her half-sister Marquis. She eventually turned her Batgirl costume over to Stephanie Brown and became a member of Batman Incorporated as Black Bat. Check out Cassandra Cain for yourself in their first appearance in 1999's Batman number 567. Number 6, Wonder Woman. If you're familiar with Michael Deodato Jr., then you probably know which Wonder Woman redesign that I'm going to be talking about today. Now for some reason, Mike had this deep desire to take some of our favorite characters and just turn them into fashion abominations. In the 90s, Wonder Woman's mother, Queen Hippolyta, saw a vision of Wonder Woman being killed in the near future. In order to prevent this, she concocted a ridiculous scheme that involved disowning her daughter and crowning someone else Wonder Woman, with the idea that this new Wonder Woman would be killed and her daughter would be spared, because you know, she's a classy person and family always comes first. After some challenges and a little behind the scenes manipulation by Queen Hippolyta, Diana relinquishes the title of Wonder Woman to her fellow Amazon Artemis. Needless to say, she wasn't super happy with just sitting around though while Artemis was out on the streets kicking butt and taking names, so Diana decided to grab a pair of bike shorts, a leather bra, and a crop top jacket so she could still fight crime, just not as Wonder Woman. Although, she still had a Wonder Woman belt. I don't know, it's all just very confusing. Thankfully, the days of blatant over-sexualization of strong female characters seems to be a thing of the past because this costume didn't last for too long, and soon enough she returned to her classic costume. Want to see how interesting this costume is for yourself? Well, then check out 1995's Wonder Woman Volume 2, number 93. Number 5. Donna Troy. With a total of 7 retcons, Donna Troy's origins are pretty confusing. When Wonder Girl made her debut, she was literally Wonder Woman as a teenager. Eventually, Wonder Woman shared her comic with her younger self when Wonder Girl was part of the Teen Titans. Wonder Woman and Wonder Girl were then seemingly revealed to be sisters, and eventually Marv Wolfman revealed that Wonder Girl was Donna Troy, an orphan taken in by the Amazons following a fire. During New Teen Titans, Wolfman then revealed that Donna was part of a baby trafficking ring, and after Crisis on Infinite Earths, Donna was instead an orphan that had been raised by the mythological Titans to be a new Titan in the future. Later it was revealed that Donna was actually a magical double of Wonder Woman created when Diana was a child, and then this allowed Donna to become a part of the Wonder Woman storyline once again, as she was a part of the Wonder Woman family now. After quote-unquote dying, Donna was temporarily revived and led to believe that she was a moon goddess as part of a plot by the Titans of Myth. Then in the New 52, Donna was now a double of Diana once again. However, during the DC Rebirth, Wally West told Donna that he remembered her from his past for some reason, so she was in the midst of yet another origin retcon at that time. Check out Donna's multiple stories for yourself, starting with their first appearance in 1965, The Brave and the Bold, number 60. Number 4. Thor. Another Mike Deodato Jr. redesign that really just did not work or stick around for too long. It really takes an imaginative and somewhat unhinged mind to look at the God of Thunder and go, you know what would be cool? If we made Thor just a little bit more metal. Mike reimagined Thor as a cross between an 80s hair metal music video and Fabio, effectively stripping him of any Nordic qualities, which is, you know, kind of Thor's whole thing. The most confusing thing about this unprompted and out of the blue design, in my opinion, is the fact that Mjolnir is attached to Thor via a massive chain, like the world's most impractical chain wallet, lasting for only 4 issues before Thor reappeared with his more traditional costume. Now the one good thing that we got out of this costume was it was meant to bring light to the idea of sexualization of characters in comic books, you know, something that female characters are much more familiar with than the males, so Mike wanted to try and change that a little bit. Check out this costume redesign for yourself, starting with its first appearance in 2004's Thor Visionaries, Mike Deodato Jr., Volume 1, Number 1. Number 3. X-Men. Individually, the X-Men have had many redesigns over the years. I mean, just take a look at Wolverine alone, but as a team, there have been 2 major changes that I feel deserve to be talked about. Now, I'm sure we're all familiar with the classic yellow and blue color scheme that the original X-Men wore, with their unique flair thrown in there. But when Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely took the reins for their run with the Mutant Hero team, they brought a collective identity with them. The black jackets, decorated with a large yellow X and small yellow X patches on the arms, granted the group a very modern look without taking anything away from the characters themselves. This redesign was a perfect way to bring the X-Men into a new age, however, not every iteration can be a hit. In 2011's X-Men and Wolverine solo anime series, the characters just seem, I don't know, off in a way that I can't really explain. Like, whoever designed Wolverine didn't seem to get the memo that he's supposed to be short, burly, and just a muscular animal of a man, and not an anime pretty boy with a mullet. And, well, the other X-Men designs aren't that much better. Check out these designs for yourself in 2001 to 2004's New X-Men and in 2011's X-Men TV's miniseries. Number 2. Lobo. Another character who has had a couple redesigns over the years, one that we're very thankful for, and one that, I'm not too sure about. If you're like me, then you probably didn't realize that Lobo's original design was very different and a whole lot less edgy than his modern look. In 1983's Omega Men number 3, Lobo made his first debut and was wearing a purple and orange onesie-like costume that made him look more crazy than scary. However, fans fell in love with the character very quickly, and this led to a redesign for him that turned him into the iconic biker anti-hero that we all know and love. However, in 2011, when DC established the New 52, DC decided to revamp Lobo from the ground up by asserting that the old Lobo, the one that fans love, was actually an imposter, and that the real Lobo had been traveling across the galaxy in order to stake claim to his name and destroy the imposter. This new Lobo had a very sleek look and suave aura about him, which immediately set him apart from his imposter, but he was just as powerful and dangerous. New 52 Lobo was last seen held captive in one of Brainiac 2.0's bottles. Take a look at him and his story for yourself, starting with 2013's Justice League Volume 2, number 23.2, Lobo. And number 1, Sue Storm. This seems to be unanimously one of the worst redesigns in comic book history. Now, it's pretty common knowledge that the Fantastic Four have never really been too fashion forward. Their costumes resemble footy pajamas with boots more than costumes, but nonetheless, they perfectly represented the legendary quartet. Appearing at a time when women in media were urged to be more subservient lest they inspire deviant behavior, Sue often played second fiddle to the rest of Marvel's first superhero family. However, in the 90s, Sue received an overhauled attitude and she received one of the worst costumes in the history of female superheroes. Gone was the bodysuit and it was replaced with short shorts and a skin-tight top with a cutout on her chest in the shape of a 4. Now, it was later revealed that Psycho Man somehow managed to manipulate Sue's repressed negative feelings and turned her into a separate entity called Malice, who took over Sue's body and proceeded to act very classless. But still, there was no need for this redesign at all. It took about a year, but Sue eventually returned to her classic bodysuit, and thankfully, she has not been over-sexualized since then.
Number 10. Batman. Batman has undergone a lot of changes over the years. Remember when he had a rainbow wardrobe? But even if we're not talking about how he went from black to color back to full-on black in his outfit in the comics, one doesn't have to look far to see how magically he seems to have transformed. Let's even just look at Batman on the screen. Batman used to have his own series in the 1960s where Adam West was famous for his role as the Caped Crusader. But while this might be your Batman, today if you put Adam West's bats next to Ben Affleck's Batman, you might notice some drastic changes. And who knows what it'll be like when we put him next to Robert Pattinson. His suit has gone from spandex tights to full-on armor, and he has become dazed. Not going to lie, I kinda miss the days when a dad bod was considered fit enough to be a superhero. Bring the dad bods back. Number 9. Daredevil. Have you always thought of Daredevil as a skilled and trained martial artist who could even be considered a ninja? Yes? Well, you're wrong. In fact, Daredevil was originally introduced as a hero who received superpowers from the same radioactive material that blinded him. So while we now think of him as just a normal dude who has enhanced senses and is a trained fighter, originally his superpowers extended beyond his senses. It seemed his run-in with the radioactive materials had granted him enhanced agility and strength as well, though he was already in pretty great shape previously from his boxing training. That's right, he got all that fitness from boxing training, not from becoming a ninja. It wasn't until writer Frank Miller introduced the idea of him being trained by stick at a young age to become the skilled fighter he is today that this was even a thing, his martial arts stuff. And by the way, that didn't happen until over 20 years after Daredevil's introduction. This changed very much the way the character was written and perceived by readers. It made him more human, more relatable, and it made it easier really to turn his world upside down, which Matt Murdock has had happen to him many times over in the comics, especially during Frank Miller's run, but not exclusively. Everyone likes to turn his world upside down. Number 8. Jubilee. Jubilee was first introduced in Uncanny X-Men issue 244, and would later become popularized through the 1990s X-Men animated series. That's where I remember first falling in love with her. She had explosive powers that were often illustrated as her having the ability to short-circuit tech and create fireworks. Later we would go on to find that Jubilee was so much more powerful than we originally thought, as her explosions work on an atomic level. In fact, even on a subatomic level you could say, meaning that she could create explosions with a similar devastating effect to a nuclear bomb. But while she and her power set would grow during her time with the X-Men, she would also undergo another transformation that would change her drastically. She became a vampire. While she was later cured of her vampirism, this was an interesting time in Jubilee's life that many would have opinions on. Most people either completely love it or completely hate it. We'd also see Jubilee take on more responsibility and become an adult and mom. A big change from when we met her in the animated series as a young teen mall rat who lived in the mall. She was a mall rat, she just hung out at the mall all the time, and she also lived there, so literally. Number 7. Wonder Woman. Remember that time Wonder Woman was depowered and made a martial artist trained spy? No? Well, it happened. You may remember the days when Wonder Woman was no more than Justice Society of America's honorary member and secretary. But do you remember her weird mod-inspired spy adventures? This happened during Danny O'Neill's run in the late 1960s. After losing her powers, Wonder Woman became Diana Prince and was trained in martial arts by I Ching. Oh, comics in the 60s. I Ching, what a name. Fortunately, the outcry of comic book fans everywhere saw her transform back to her Amazonian superpowered self as Wonder Woman. Number 6. Thor. Not only have there been changes made to this character since his introduction to the MCU, where let's face it, Hemsworth basically became Thor, but since his introduction to the screen, he has changed quite a bit in appearance. Did you know that Thor appeared on television before he made his way to the big screen? Yeah. We have to go way back to the 80s for his first appearance, but it happened. Thor was first played by Eric Allen Kramer in the 1988 made-for-television movie The Incredible Hulk Returns, with Lou Ferrigno starring as the Incredible Hulk. This Thor resembled the more classic look of the comics, but also he had some very furry shoulder pauldrons instead of his classic cape, which is weird. When Hemsworth took up the mantle, he would look similar to this version of Thor, but swap out the furry pauldrons for the more comic book accurate red cape. And then he would go on to change the look of the character further when he shed those famous golden locks, sporting a shorter haircut in Thor Ragnarok, which oddly enough had a bit of a psychedelic 70s/80s vibe to it. So yeah, which Thor do you like more? Long hair Thor? Short hair Thor? Two eyes Thor? One eye Thor? Bionic eye Thor? All the eyes. I think Thor just needs more eyes, really. He should have like 6 eyes. Number 5. Captain America. That's right, we're talking about the black, red, and white costume, but not the full black one that Steve wore in the MCU, although there's definitely overlap in regards to story and look for sure in regards to these outfits. This actually happened in the 80s, and while you may recognize this look as USA agents, John Walker's, did you know that before Walker got the outfit, Cap donned it? He actually wore it after he was forced to go somewhat off the grid. See, ever since Cap had emerged from that ice block, he'd kind of been a bit of a free agent, till a mysterious government figure appeared wanting to use him for his own means. He even told Cap that he really had no choice, but Steve responded telling him he certainly did have a choice, as America is a free country. Cap rebelled, getting his new outfit and shortening his mantle just to Captain. While the figure went on to find his own Captain America in John Walker. Later the two would swap outfits and Walker would go on to wear it as US agent. Number 4. Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. The most unacceptable transformation of them all to me. Not only were these two drastically transformed for the big screen in the MCU, Scarlet Witch herself has gone on to continue to change dramatically actually since her cinematic introduction, even losing her accent and completely changing her costume, but they also underwent a huge change in the comic book world as well. If you're super familiar with my biggest comic book gripes, then you might know what I'm about to mention here. Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver had a very mysterious past originally in the comics, until it was later revealed that they were actually the children of Magneto and were mutants. Scarlet Witch herself would change mutant kind forever when she altered reality during the events of House of M. She and Quicksilver had become a big part of the mutant world, but then it turned out that they weren't mutants. In fact, they weren't even Magneto's kids. What? During the Axis event, Scarlet Witch attempted to cast a spell to harm those of her blood, but although it worked on Quicksilver, it did not work on Magneto, revealing that he was not the father. Turned out that they'd actually been disguised as mutants by the High Evolutionary, and all the history, all the drama, all the emotion that we thought we knew just fell away and no longer really mattered. Just threw it out with the trash. Can't believe that. This is one of the most devastating transformations and retcons ever. For me at least. Hopefully it was for you too, and you feel my fury. Number 3. Power Girl. That's right, we're gonna talk about that loss of the window. Gotta let Power Girl have her cleavage. I'm pro that. Just FYI. I'm pro cleavage. Not only has Power Girl had her past retcon multiple times over, like when she was all of a sudden Atlantean, like Aquaman for some reason, but we have also seen drastic and shocking changes come about in regards to her costume. For years, Power Girl was known for her leotard outfit with its little peekaboo window on the front, showcasing Power Girl's insane cleavage. This was a huge part of her look, and while it is very revealing, it was also just very Power Girl. Power Girl isn't the type to care what people think when it comes to what she wears. She is bold and strong, brave, and usually quite confident. She's her own woman. But in 2012, DC decided to redesign her costume and close up that window, because how else could Power Girl be taken seriously, right? You can't have cleavage and be taken seriously, right guys? People revolted, and not just because they wanted to see more skin, but because Power Girl's costume is very much a part of her identity. Also, earlier on in the comics, didn't Power Girl say something like she would never close that window? She was like, I can never close it. And then she closed it. It's like, what? Excuse me? Number 2. Sam Wilson. Remember when writers transformed Falcon into the thug Snap Wilson? No? Well, this was definitely one that shocked readers at the time. Wilson first met Captain America in issue 117 of the original series. Rogers recognized the bravery in Sam and suggested he join him in fighting crime. Sam accepted and became Falcon. The two would become a regular and well-loved team until issue 185, when it was revealed that Sam was actually Sam Snap Wilson, an LA-based thug and gangster. Apparently Red Skull had brainwashed him into becoming the perfect partner for Cap, only so that he could later activate Snap and have him double-cross Captain America, causing pain to Steve over the loss of his partner and the betrayal of his trust. No one really liked this for Sam's storyline, as it retconned a past that was notable and good, which had made him a great African American superhero at the time and role model. Falcon would eventually become good again, but his past as Snap Wilson, unfortunately, seemed to stick around. It had been somewhat selectively forgotten by writers until it was addressed in the all-new Captain America series, where instead Snap Wilson would be established as the fake and brainwashed persona instead of the other way around. So Red Skull brainwashed him to be like Snap Wilson, and the whole time he was Sam Wilson. Which I like better for him, because that transformation was a bad one. And a sad one. Number 1. Superman. Superman hasn't just changed outwardly throughout the years, he has also gone a lot of power changes as well, and emotional changes. We have seen writers paint him in a less favorable light. In the Injustice games and comics, he becomes a superpowered dictator, basically ruling over everyone with an iron fist, for what he considered was the greater good, after snapping following the death of Lois Lane and his unborn child. There is Red Sun Superman as well, who grows up in the Soviet Union and ends up reluctantly teaming up with Brainiac to attack the US. Though, granted, he defects to being good after all that. His powers have gone in the main continuity from being virtually limitless up till the 80s, before being made quite specific. Originally, kryptonite weakened him, but later it was shown that Kal-El's exposure to kryptonite could actually be fatal and kill him. He also gained a weakness to magic and at his power's source, more directly linked to our sun's solar energy. Costume-wise, on screen we've seen him go from George Reeves, who played him in the 50s TV series Adventures of Superman, to Henry Cavill, who played him more recently in the Justice League film from 2017. One big difference is how much more muscular he's become, as well as the fact that his underwear no longer appears to be on the outside of his costume. In the post-Convergence comic book work, his costume was drastically different though, with a depowered Superman just running around on a motorbike in jeans and a t-shirt. So he's Transformation City over there, Superman. But he's also been around for a really long time, so unsurprisingly we gotta change him up every now and then.
At number 10, we've got Aquaman. Looking specifically at the redesigns that occurred between the Super Friends era and the 90s look. There's no arguing that the Super Friends look is pretty corny. Some would say that any redesign would have made it better, but what went into making Aquaman go from looking like this to looking like this was a decision that not only changed the way we saw Aquaman, but how we knew him as well. Firstly, the original look has him extremely clean looking, like he's been untouched by any battle, which we all know isn't true. And maybe that's just how superheroes were illustrated back then. But the 90s look has him with a harpoon for a hand, no shirt, and this sweet metal chest piece that just makes him look like he's really from the depths of the ocean. His trident also has a major redesign here that gives a more menacing look, like it's really designed to do real damage. And maybe it's not quite part of the costume, but the long hair and beard just seem like the right choice for Aquaman that should have been a thing from day one maybe. But maybe that's just me.
Number 9. The Hulk. Now, this isn't exactly a redesign, and I'll give you that. It's more like a mistake. It's a mistake that led to one of the most iconic characters for Marvel. When the Incredible Hulk first appeared in Marvel Comics, his skin was actually a gray color to keep him indistinguishable from any real-world race, as Stan Lee wanted. But an issue with the colorist's ink actually led to the character coming out looking green, which, I mean, you still get the desired effect. Stan actually ended up liking the green more, and they stuck with it. Good call, Stan the Man. We miss you. Narratively, they even gave a reason for this. At first saying it was prolonged gamma exposure, and later saying that Grey Hulk was an alternate personality version of the Hulk.
At number 8, we have Wolverine. Wolverine's costume has had many changes over the years, but the change from the original yellow look is a significant design choice in the right direction. The thing is, Wolverine looks pretty cool in the original X-Men uniform, but something about this darker look feels like it complements his personality more. The red eyes and the black-gray tones in this outfit are so cool and much more menacing than the classic yellow tiger stripe design, which reflects what X-Force stands for as well. X-Force is a mutant organization put together by Wolverine himself, which applies lethal force if the mission calls for it. It makes sense that Wolverine would be behind something like this because of his inherent Machiavellian outlook on life. This character has lived for so long and through so much that his jadedness has become a staple to who he is, and this redesign just strikes me as being a more accurate portrayal of who Logan is behind the costume.
Number 7, Drax the Destroyer. Thanks to the MCU, it's really hard to think of Drax the Destroyer in any other way. But the MCU's depiction actually borrows from the redesign of Drax from 2004. For this though, Drax here was, well, he had a cape. Capes are cool, no doubt, but I mean, he's just so much better now. Take a look at his design when he was first introduced in the 1970s. Bright green skin with a very comic booky purple costume. It was unique, I'll give you that, but as the rival to the Mad Titan Thanos, it's just nowhere near as imposing and intimidating as it should be. The 2004 design with the pale green skin, red tattoos, and knives evoke the kind of strength and power that comes from the title of the Destroyer.
At number 6, we have the Flash. Looking at the Jay Garrick Golden Age Flash, we can all agree that there was room for improvement. Need I mention the elephant in the room? The silly hat? Okay, I know it has sentimental value, having been his father's World War I helmet, but it just doesn't look very cool. I'm sorry. And he would use it as a weapon by throwing it at bad guys? Anyway, I'm just roasting him now. But when Barry Allen is introduced in 1956 with a new outfit, it seems like it was always meant to be that way. His helmet is replaced with a mask, and the little lightning bolts stick around, which we're happy to see. This costume then basically remains untouched until today, having undergone a few redesigns that didn't really stick, like Kid Flash, which, I don't know. It doesn't do it for me. And the John Fox look, which once again, I don't know if it's the right decision for the character. I think the best place the design has found itself is Wally West's costume, which just gives the character a sleek look with lots of integrity.
Number 5, Lobo. Okay, before you jump on me in the comments saying he's a villain, he's more of an anti-hero, okay? When Lobo first appeared in DC Comics, well, he looked like poo. You were more likely to laugh than to think he had any kind of strength going for him. He had an orange and light purple skin-tight suit for Pete's sake. But when he reappeared with his biker motif, it just made sense. Ripped jeans, leather gloves and a vest. With all his craziness, foul language, weapons, and spiked hair, he needed the rest of him to match. And I think we can all agree his iconic hook was definitely a worthwhile addition. Let's just forget about his newest New 52 redesign though.
No. At number 4, we have Iron Man. This is one of the biggest redesigns on the list, and for good reason. The old Iron Man is made to look like he's literally wearing a big suit of armor that Tony Stark would crudely bolt himself into. But over time, with the way that the character's abilities become more advanced, so does the costume. It gets sleeker, more form-fitting, and the colors are toned down a bit, making for a more realistic look, tonally. Something I noticed that's a real eyesore from the original look is the design of the face. The original eye holes and mouth make Iron Man look kind of soulless, like there isn't even a person in the costume. And sometimes that was actually the case, but as Tony Stark's storyline is refined, it seems as though his costume gets less and less blocky as well. And this wasn't only the case for Iron Man. It was arguably the case for every other hero in this list and beyond. With comic books getting more legitimized over time, the depth of all the characters expanded, allowing for cooler, less fantastical designs that you might actually be able to imagine seeing in the real world.
Number 3, Spider-Man. This is an arguable point. Spider-Man's red and blue classic suit is extremely iconic, and I don't think anyone thinks it's bad. The Sam Raimi version of that suit is beautiful, but if you tell me that you dislike the Black Venom symbiote or the black cloth version of this suit, 1, you're a liar, and 2, we can't be friends. This suit was actually designed by a guy called Randy Schuler for a contest Marvel had, and they paid him $220 for it. I'm not sure how that compares to today, inflation-wise, but that $220 bought the Spider-Man's greatest designs outside the original. So great, they even came up with excuses for him to wear it after getting rid of the symbiote version of it.
Okay, at number 2, we have the Batman costume designs from the movies. This is a big one that I think a lot of people agree with. Looking at his original look from the 1966 Batman TV show and the redesigns that took place place to get to Christopher Nolan's designs for The Dark Knight, it's clear to anyone that these were major steps in the right direction. Although the original look was probably meant to be a bit goofy, it still could have looked a little less like pajamas and still gotten the feeling across. This is an important transformation to analyze because Batman's original outfit speaks to how seriously comic books were being taken back in the 60s, and that was not very seriously. Honestly, Adam West looks like he pulled a $10 Batman costume off the secondhand shelf at a Halloween store in November. I mean, it barely looks like the cowl fit him. And then when we were blessed with the Dark Knight trilogy back in 2005, we were reminded that these days, Batman is a serious character that deserves a serious look. His suit got darker, more slick, and it finally looked like real armor, which makes sense for the subject matter, which has, over the years, gotten much more gruesome and violent. This was an essential redesign that demonstrates not only how far Batman has come as a character, but how far comic books have come as well, and the massive success of the Nolan trilogy suggests that people were ready for that change.
Number 1. Carol Danvers. The original Carol Danvers Miss Marvel costume is so incredibly different from her redesign as Captain Marvel that you'd be forgiven for thinking they were different people at first. Her Miss Marvel costume was characterized by a black leotard with a big yellow lightning bolt, bare legs, and black boots and gloves. While being an iconic costume, knowing what we know of her backstory and looking at the tone and personality of her character, it didn't seem right for Carol Danvers. When she jumped on the scene with her red and blue pilot-esque Captain Marvel uniform with the shorter hair and the star emblem, she exudes the confidence and strength that her character demands. She even still kept the red sash belt thing, which was probably my favorite part of her costume. This is the suit that inspired her MCU costume with not a single trace or mention of her Miss Marvel suit. It is also the suit that almost everyone has gotten to know her by and has completely revamped and reimagined her character. Number 10. Superman. This version of Superman, the one in the Kingdom Come story by Mark Waid, with art by Alex Ross and Mike Carlin, is set in an alternate reality, Earth 22. Meaning it isn't a baseline redesign for the character. For that matter, it isn't even a complete overhaul of Superman's costume. The only difference they made to the costume was that Clark's hair had silver streaks to show his age, and the yellow parts of his emblem were changed to black. Otherwise, his costume was a very classic Superman getup. But those two little changes, plus just the overall style of the art itself, did something to this Superman that for me, it just makes me tingle, you know? Number 9. Daredevil. When Daredevil first came out on the scene in 1964, his look was different from the one most readers are used to. Instead of his normal color scheme, Daredevil instead had a predominantly yellow suit, with only parts of the suit being the familiar red color. Now, in my humble opinion, the yellow and red suit has its own perks. The overall design of the suit is fairly similar to what would come later. But I will agree that when he showed up in Daredevil number 7 with the all-red suit, courtesy of artist Wally Wood, it was an instant stick. It was more in keeping with the darker, brooding, street-level nature of his stories. And it stuck for, well, pretty much the rest of his publication. Hey guys, before we go on, I just want to say a quick little thanks for watching. I also want to say thanks for those of you that leave comments below. I read a lot of them, and you guys always have interesting and helpful things to say. So thanks. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I won't forget to get on with this video. Number 8, the Punisher logo. Okay. I want to talk about this one for a couple of reasons, but let's just say it. Straight up, it's controversial, which always makes for a good discussion. Basically, the classic Punisher logo that has been around since the 70s got a bit of a redesign this year. Punisher has joined the Hand, and in doing so, he has changed his logo to resemble that of an Oni. There's also reason to believe that the symbol may reflect his status within the organization. Unfortunately, there is also a real-world political reason for the change. The logo itself was being adopted by real-world police officers, which is kind of odd considering Punisher is pretty anti-authority, and was even worn by some of those who were involved in the Capitol riots, leading Marvel to make a politically motivated change. Love it or hate it, it is the new look for the character right now. I'm not totally opposed to it, but I know at least a few of you guys out there are a little upset. Let me know what you think below. Number 7. X-Men. I don't know if you know what the original costumes of the X-Men looked like back in the day. Yellow and dark navy blue with yellow and black boots and gloves. Except for Beast, who is still vaguely human and didn't wear boots or gloves, and Iceman, who was more like Snowman. The matching costumes definitely show that this was a team, even with their different and unique mutant abilities. There have been many iterations of X-Men costumes since, but for me, when the characters themselves got their own individual costumes in issue 39 of the comic, that's when they really came into their own. The leader of the team, Cyclops, has generally used this look and variations on this look ever since. Mostly. The other members took a bit more time to find iconic looks, namely Angel and Beast, who eventually got his blue fur. Number 6. Star-Lord. When Star-Lord showed up in Marvel Preview number 4, he was a far cry away from what most fans have come to recognize him as. I think he kinda looks a lot like Owlman from the Watchmen comics, to be honest, but even Peter's personality was much different. The tagline on the comic was, "He stalks the galaxy, one man on a mission of cosmic vengeance." That doesn't sound like the typical wisecracking, sarcastic young hero we know today. Even before Chris Pratt took on the character, Star-Lord was revamped in the 2006 and 2007 Annihilation event, where he formed the Guardians of the Galaxy and got an incredible new costume change, ditching the more cowl-like headpiece for a full helmet and the skin-tight outfit for a more loose-fitting uniform. It just gives his character a much more distinctive look, in my opinion. Number 5. Green Lantern. Technically, this point can be argued with. This isn't so much a redesign as a wholly different character, but ask anyone who isn't deeply knowledgeable of the comics who the original Green Lantern is, and you're likely to hear them say Hal Jordan. Now, I'm just guessing here, but I think that has a lot to do with the fact that Hal Jordan's look, compared to the one of Alan Scott, is just so much more iconic. Alan Scott sported a black cape with a red collared top, green pants, and a sweet normal looking belt. Sure, he is a different character and not technically an official Green Lantern, but when Hal Jordan came in with a green and black suit with hints of white, it just stuck. Let's just not talk about the movie version, okay? Number 4. Robin, Damian Wayne. We talked about Batman in the last video, so it's only fair we talk about his ward. Specifically, I want to talk about the costume of the newest Robin, and Batman's son, Damian Wayne. If we go back in time and look at the classic original Robin's costume, well, let's just say it kinda goes with the costume of the Caped Crusader at the time. In other words, it's incredibly impractical. I'm also thinking the bare legs wouldn't bode too well in the streets of Gotham, but that's just me. The costume was evolved over the years for sure, but the one that Damian wears when he appears as Robin in 2006, it's just like, ooh, I like it. You know, it's kind of hard to get specific on what makes this one so much better, I'll be honest. But if we just slap up some comparison pics, I mean, it's just better. Number 3. Ultimate's Hawkeye. The Ultimate Universe in Marvel sees a lot of changes to character designs that honestly kind of reflect the MCU looks just a little bit. Overall, I think the outfits are improvements on the originals. I want to give a big nod to Ultimate Thor. But I think the best of the character overhauls would have to be Hawkeye's Ultimate Universe costume. The black vest, the crew cut, and the red glasses make him look even more like a secret agent, which he is. It's also a bit edgier and darker than his 616 counterpart, which most of the Ultimates are, considering the comics were aimed at teens. Fight me in the comments, but I definitely prefer this costume. Number 2. Batgirl. Batgirl first appeared in Detective Comics 359, sporting an all-black costume with a yellow bat symbol, belt, boots, and gloves. Personally, I didn't have much of a problem with this look. I thought it was simple, for sure, and quite basic. Just like the other members of the Bat family, Barbara Gordon also got a ton of redesigns through the years. But in 2014, when she got a redesign thanks to artists Cameron Stewart, Brendan Fletcher, and Babs Tarr, the new look, much like Damian's Robin suit, just made more sense. The costume was much more practical. More of a jacket kind of design with a removable cape. The belt was more casual, more like a holster design. Her design had much more personality too this way, which really works for the character herself, who also has a strong personality. Number 1. Nightwing. Nightwing first appeared after leaving the Bat family in Tales of the Teen Titans Volume 1, number 44, and his costume was, honestly, not too bad. It was goofy for sure. Don't get me started on the collar, but with those gold wing designs, it was pretty cool. I'd be a fool though if I didn't say that the blue V costume that debuted in 1996 is the best suit that character has ever worn, if we don't take into account his newest DC Rebirth suit, which is basically just a slightly updated version of this one. The simple blue bird across the chest and into the arms, mixed with the rest of the suit being black, yeah, it's a simpler look, but one that ultimately works better than any other. Number 10. Nova. Alright, starting off our little list today is going to actually be more of a different version of a character of the same name rather than a redesign. There have been multiple Nova Primes throughout the history of the universe, Richard Rider is absolutely the main one, and he is fantastic. I absolutely adore his Nova Prime costume. But when we first saw Samuel Alexander in Point One, Number 1 in 2011 sporting the black Nova helmet, I'm sorry, it just did something special for me. I really enjoy it. Granted, being a younger, more slender guy, he doesn't exude the same kind of power that Richard Rider does. But that doesn't make him any less powerful, and it doesn't make his costume any less impressive. Also, Disney, if you're listening, let me play Samuel Alexander, please. I want to wear his costume. Thank you. Number 9. Beast. We mentioned in the last video the way the X-Men uniforms were all essentially variations of the same costume. Hank McCoy was a shorter, stocky guy. He had huge hands and feet, and his original costume didn't even have gloves or boots, which helped him to stand out even more. Hank was the bruiser on the team for sure, with his mutations being strength and agility. But while he may have been a somewhat odd-looking guy, he was still fairly human-looking. That is, until Amazing Adventures number 11 in 1972. Hank got a job at Roxxon, basically, where he developed a serum that acted as a catalyst for activating latent mutations for short periods of time, and then he drank it. The effects of this serum ended up making Hank grow gray fur. His muscles expanded, his ears became large and pointed, he got claws, and his canine teeth grew and became fangs. The serum further increased his superhuman agility, endurance, speed, and strength, as well as enhancing his senses. In Amazing Adventures 14, his fur would become blue thanks to Quasimodo, and he's been the same ever since. Whoa, slow your roll there. I gotta talk about how great you are. Every time you like and subscribe, it sends a ripple through the YouTube algorithm that makes this channel look just a bit more attractive. So thanks for doing that. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook as well. And I'll carry on making this video. Number 8. Scarlet Witch. Now, I don't know if everyone's seen the WandaVision show, but it's definitely one you should check out if you are a Marvel fan. One of the best parts, at least for me, was seeing Wanda Maximoff get a new look. A look that pays homage to the origins of the character, but embraces a modern design, and just makes her look like a total badass. Which I think most of the fans out there have really been craving. Her powers in the MCU haven't always been all that they potentially could be, even though she outclasses almost every other hero in the MCU. But moving forward, I think we are definitely starting to see her break out of the shell, and this costume really embodies that. I am so excited to see her in the Multiverse of Madness. She is gonna be sick. Number 7. Deathstroke. We always gotta include at least one morally ambiguous character on these lists. But at least this time, it's when he was actually acting as a hero. When Deathstroke was the leader of a superhero team, Defiance, he wore an awesome black and white costume. But not only did this costume change up his color scheme, he actually got a cape. Edna Mode would not approve. His black and orange color scheme is definitely a classic, and I'm not necessarily saying this is better, but I mean it comes extremely close. It's better. And the story it belongs to is such a good one. Check it out. Number 6. Superman's black costume. Alright, here we go. Look, he may have a mullet, but Superman in a black costume? I mean, come on. After the Man of Steel was resurrected in Superman Volume 2, number 81 after his death at the hands of Doomsday, he came back with an all-black costume with silver symbol and wrist gauntlet type things. I don't know about you guys, and I know a lot of people hate that mullet, but you put any hero in black compared to their usual color scheme, and I'm here for it. The costume would get a revamp in the Justice League live-action movie when Henry Cavill comes back to life, and it looked even better there. It may not have lasted too long, but I think this costume has a definite place in my favorite alternate superhero costumes. Number 5. Monica Rambeau. When Monica Rambeau showed up in her costume in Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 16, it was a statement. I liked it, honestly. It was simple and unique. I don't really like the underarm wing things, they were kind of weird, but ultimately it worked for the time. She has been around for a long time, being part of the Avengers, Next Wave, and the Ultimates, but it was in the Next Wave number 1 where I think she got the best addition to her costume. All it took was a coat, and she instantly became so much cooler. The color of her under costume changed a bit, which it consistently does, but the jacket has now become a staple, and every time she's wearing it, I am swooning. Number 4. Red Hood. When Jason Todd was killed by the Joker in Death of the Family, it was a huge thing. It was heartbreaking. It was brutal. It was visceral. 6 months after his death, though, he was resurrected, and he was restored by Talia al Ghul in the Lazarus Pits. He would join and be trained by the League of Assassins, eventually leaving to pursue justice, although a bit more brutally than before. Enter the Red Hood, and an absolutely awesome new costume. Inspired by the original Red Hood costume worn by Joker, Jason's Red Hood costume is so much better. It's menacing and tactical and badass. I think I have a thing for jackets because, again, I love the frickin' jacket. Number 3, Batgirl Cassandra Cain. Okay, look, we talked about Batgirl in the last point, but we were talking about Barbara. If we want to get really into Batgirl designs that will knock your socks off, we don't have to look any farther than Cassandra Cain. Cassandra is the 4th Batgirl, and she is the daughter of David Cain and Lady Shiva, 2 assassins who raised and trained Cassandra to become the perfect warrior. She became the new Batgirl in Batman No Man's Land, and let me just say, if I was walking the streets of Gotham and I saw someone dressed like this, I would just move, like to a different city. It's so fitting for her, it's intimidating, it's intense, and if I was a criminal, it would give me nightmares. Number 2, Blade. When Blade first appeared in Tomb of Dracula number 10, he had an interesting costume choice. Blade sported a collared jacket with a bandolier, armed with stakes, riding boots, and let's not forget the super sweet yellow glasses. More of like a cool pirate with yellow goggles than a vampire hunter. He would have different variations of the costume. One that was actually pretty good was when he wore green goggles, a purple jacket and matching boots, green trousers, and a yellow belt. But in Night Stalkers number 1 in the 90s, he finally showed up in the leather, sporting a leather jacket, all black clothing with the katanas. Of course, this was born out of the 90s, but it stuck. It has evolved over the years, but the key things introduced have stayed. The leather. The leather stuck. Number 1. Storm. The X-Men Storm is one of the coolest looking characters in Marvel Comics, for me. And that fact only gets reinforced in the Marvel Dark Ages number 4, when she shows up in a Wakandan-inspired gold and silver costume. It is absolutely stunning. Storm herself is an extremely fashion-heavy member of the X-Men. She changes up her look often, and it's usually in unique and awesome ways. Like, I really liked when she had the mohawk. But this Wakanda costume just takes the absolute cake for me. It calls back to her original costume from the second Genesis X-Men, but it's regal as hell, which it should be when she's the queen of Wakanda. The designs are amazing, and if I saw her show up like this, I'd believe she was a goddess too.
Number 10, Iron Man, but with a nose. In order to ease ourselves into the parade of awful, let's start out simple. The story of this redesign is pretty great. Apparently, Stan Lee was looking over artwork for an issue of Iron Man that had been drawn by a relatively new artist. When the artist drew Iron Man in profile, he had drawn Tony's eyes too close to the surface of the mask, which would mean that there was no room for his nose in the helmet. Stan pointed this out, saying something along the lines of, "Hey true believers, where's this cat's nose?" The editors misunderstood Stan's point and decided to start drawing Iron Man's mask with a nose on it. The in-story reason for this change was that Iron Man wanted his mask to be more expressive so that his enemies would be filled with terror, so he added a nose. Now, I don't know about you, but if a flying robot death machine being piloted by a drunken billionaire crashed through my wall, I would be terrified regardless of whether or not it had a nose. This change lasted a few issues before Stan Lee saw it and said something along the lines of, "Why does Iron Man have a nose? That looks stupid. Nuff said." So after that, Iron Man lost the weird Michael Jackson nose and went back to his regular look. Number 9, Casual Friday Superman. Another one that's not that bad is Superman's original New 52 look. After the DC universe was rebooted, Action Comics showed us some adventures from the early days of this version of the character. As a Superman who is still figuring out what kind of hero he is, this look makes a lot of sense. Instead of the tights and trunks, he wears blue jeans and a t-shirt with the Superman logo. I I don't hate this look, but I do think the short red cape looks a bit out of place with such a casual look for the Man of Steel. It's a bit underwhelming for a character like Superman, but that is intentional as it helps build anticipation for the moment when he does eventually get his full New 52 costume, which is actually one of the character's better looks. Towards the end of the New 52 era, Superman returned to his more casual look after he had been weakened by using his new solar flare power, giving the whole thing a nice sense of symmetry. Overall, I like this look for the story purpose it serves, but from a pure aesthetic point of view, it's probably one of Superman's worst. Number 8. Booster Gold's armored suit. A lot of the entries on this list are going to be from that period in the 90s when almost every character who was known for wearing spandex was suddenly given bulky metal armor. So let's start things out with what they did to Booster Gold. Booster Gold's original look features various bits of tech that he stole from a museum that he worked at in the 25th century. This includes a force field belt that is able to repel contact from all known forces short of a nuclear blast. This is why he's able to get away with wearing a light spandex costume, or at least he was. When his usual supersuit was destroyed in the 90s, Booster was forced to wear this rather bulky and heavily armored version of his suit. As someone who really likes Booster's usual look, this is a rough one to look at. And from a technical standpoint, why would someone wear armor yet leave the top of their head completely exposed? Isn't that one of the most vulnerable parts of the human body? Number 7. The Wasp's crossing redesign. Janet Van Dyne has had a few looks over the years, from her classic red and black outfit to her more modern black and yellow suit, but this founding Avenger has one look that is not remembered very fondly, and that is the look she was given in The Crossing. In this story, Tony Stark was revealed to be evil and working for Kang the Conqueror. He came into conflict with the Avengers and in the ensuing battle hit Wasp with a repulsor ray. Hank Pym tried to save her by exposing her to the chemicals that had given her powers, but this resulted in her forming a cocoon. When she came out of the cocoon, she had grown wings and antennas, and her head and hair had taken on a truly bizarre shape. Not to mention the scary long fingers she had developed. This new look came with stronger powers, but thankfully she was reverted back to her human form 10 months later in the Heroes Reborn continuity shakeup. Number 6. Black Canary's 80s look. Black Canary is a difficult character to redesign. On the one hand, her original costume is iconic. On the other hand, it is a somewhat dated and sexualized look with all the leather, corsets, and fishnets. Over the years, the look has gone through a lot of variation, trying to keep the general essence of the character intact while still making the outfit practical for a superhero. Out of the character's many looks, however, most would probably agree that this 80s redesign is the furthest from the mark. The boots are a lot to take in, but the billowy top with the long puffed sleeves is pretty rough. The worst part of this look, however, is the bird emblem that's wings extend beyond her shoulders. This look is not remembered fondly, and when the character went back to her more classic look, they made a point of showing her burning this costume on the cover of Action Comics number 609. Number 5. Armored Captain America. In the 90s, we were treated to an arc in the comics where, after so many years of being a hero, the super soldier serum in Captain America's body was beginning to wear off and was causing him to lose control of his body. This culminated in him having a massive heart attack and becoming paralyzed and unable to move his body at all. Tony Stark came to his friend's aid and constructed this metal exosuit which not only allowed him to move, but also let him fly and shoot repulsor beams and anti-missile armaments. This armor allowed him to keep fighting but did not heal Cap's heart, which resulted in him needing to get a blood and bone transplant from Red Skull. Although this is a very purpose-built suit, it is a bit too bulky for the already large Captain America, and is just another example of the 90s trend of everyone getting elaborate armor suits. What pushes it over the edge is an admittedly minor detail: the one eye hole. I don't know why, but it really bugs me, and if there was something in between the two eyes like his usual mask, I probably wouldn't have ranked it so high. I know, it's dumb, but it just bugs me so much for some reason that I can't really explain. It's a good thing articulating my opinions online isn't my job, or I'd be in real trouble. Number 4. Biker Wonder Woman. When Wonder Woman's mother learned of a prophecy that told her Wonder Woman would soon die, she tried to trick fate by making someone else Wonder Woman. She held a new contest for the title, made sure that Diana lost and that another Amazon named Artemis won. She hoped that this would result in Artemis being the one to die and Diana being able to live on. Although she was no longer Wonder Woman, Diana still operated as a hero, creating a new costume for herself. She was given leather shorts and a leather bra with only the bracelets and the W on the belt line letting you know who she was. Although to be fair, they did sometimes let her wear a jacket. This is a trend that honestly really bugs me with female redesigns, where they are given new costumes that are really over-sexualized to a point that it isn't justified by the story. Yes, it makes sense that she would get a new costume after losing the Wonder Woman mantle, but the fact that it looks like that makes whatever story reasons they give meaningless, as in the end it was just about drawing her in a skimpy costume. Same goes for Sue Storm's 90s boob window window costume that I talked about in part 1, by the way. In order to get my point across, let me give you an example. Remember when Spider-Man got the black suit and it started affecting his behavior? That was a great redesign, and the story that told it justified the change. Now imagine the same arc, but instead of the black suit, Peter is wearing a leather thong. It would make the story worse and would make me think that it was never about telling a good story. It was about drawing Spider-Man in a thong. Rant over, moving on. Number 3, Jim Gordon's robot batsuit. When Bruce Wayne lost his memories of his cape and cowl days, longtime ally Jim Gordon was forced to take up the mantle for a bit. As he was unable to physically do all the things that Batman could, he was given a powerful robot mech suit in order to help him fight crime. It was several feet tall and featured a cloaking device, rocket boots, and a tear gas cannon, as well as quite a few other tricks. This is actually a pretty fun arc in the comics, but Jim actually sums up the problems with the suit pretty well when he first sees it, saying, "I look at that thing, but I just don't see Batman. It's like a bunny. Like a robot bat bunny." And he's right. The ears make it look like a rabbit, and it kinda throws the whole look off. However, the sleek black and yellow bat suit that Jim wears inside the suit is cool as hell. Number 2, Catwoman's armored suit. The last of the armored suits on this list is the suit that Catwoman wore for one issue in Catwoman Volume 2, Issue 50. When the villainous Cybercat decided to make it her mission in life to kill Selina Kyle, Catwoman was outmatched by the powerful Mech Cat. She went to her tech specialist, Clutterbuck, and asked him to design a new suit for her that would let her go toe-to-toe with her foe. The resulting armor suit had a retractable cable whip, giant sharp claws, night vision, and wrist-mounted missiles. As Catwoman puts it, it's not exactly her. As a character known for being sleek and prowling about, this suit is just not suited for the character. Catwoman hated the suit, only using it to defeat Cybercat and then immediately having Clutterbuck destroy it in a compactor. Number 1, Flashpoint Zatanna. When Barry Allen went back in time to try and save his mother's life and accidentally created the Flashpoint timeline, we were treated to a lot of great alternate versions of characters. Their version of Zatanna is not one of them. Look, I already made my feelings about overly sexualized redesigns clear in the Wonder Woman entry, so I'm not gonna beat a dead horse despite the fact that this outfit clearly falls into that category. Instead, I'm gonna talk about when redesigns miss the point of a character. Zatanna is a magic wielder and a stage magician. Therefore, all her good designs lean into this, so that even if you know nothing about the character, you can take one look at her and guess her deal. Oh, that lady dressed as a magician probably does magic. Now, looking at the Flashpoint version of the character, her look tells you nothing about her character other than she wears a lot of leather. The fact that it does nothing to indicate what the character is about is why I think it's one of the worst superhero redesigns. Number 10, Nightfall Batman. When Batman had his back broken by Bane in the infamous Nightfall story arc, he was replaced by the vigilante Azrael, who took it upon himself to redesign the Batsuit. Now, Batman's look has remained relatively consistent over the years, usually consisting of a gray bodysuit with a blue or black cape and mask. The only real variance over the years has been the black undies, the bat emblem, and the length of his ears. So any changes Azrael was going to make were going to really stand out. The redesign featured intense shoulder pads, a more armored look, as well as claws and an overabundance of pouches. My personal favorite part of this mess is the strange fins coming out of his legs. The entire point of the Nightfall arc was to explore a classic hero like Batman's place in a 90s setting, where readers were gravitating more towards extreme anti-heroes like the Punisher. So the over-the-top nature of this costume is very much intentional, which is why it's ranked at the bottom of this list. Number 9, Daredevil's armored suit. Daredevil is a character who has managed to have a lot of good redesigns throughout the years. His original yellow and red suit was fine, but was improved upon when he was given his iconic red suit. Even his prototype suit featured in Frank Miller's Man Without Fear run is somehow iconic despite its simplicity. But when looking at his various looks from over the years, the worst in my opinion is his armored suit. It's not horrible by any stretch, but between the red on black chest pieces and the various metal plates that make his shoulders look like the vents of an air conditioner, the whole thing just feels a bit busy. This redesign was done in order to make it more convincing that Daredevil could take on stronger supervillains, but having read stories where he's taken on villains in both this outfit and the red suit, it doesn't really make much of a difference, so may as well stick with the classic suit. Number 8, 90s Thor. Okay, so the 90s were a rough time to be a superhero apparently. The industry was pushing the stories in really weird directions, and and in an effort to appeal to a modern audience in time for the approaching new millennium, it seemed like every classic hero was getting a weird new redesign. Of the 90s redesigns, very few of them stuck around, and that's a good thing, especially for Thor. Despite his original look being pretty clean and adaptable to a modern style, this somehow managed to take everything that worked about the original design and make it awful. In a move that is usually only reserved for female superheroes, the decision was made for Thor's midriff to be exposed, and for him to be given a giant leather codpiece. At least I think it's leather. It's the same color as his boots and shoulder pads, so that's probably right. I can understand how 90s Marvel would think that getting rid of the wing helmet would be the right call, but the weird faceless mask with the long flowing locks is a bit much. It's a bad look, but it does kinda draw attention to how ridiculous many female superhero designs are by applying the same aesthetic to a male figure. Number 7. Raven's New 52 look. Raven's original look is brilliant in its simplicity. One piece with a cool belt and a long flowing cloak with a large hood that covers her eyes. It's great. They eventually changed it to give her pants. Totally understandable. Not complaining. I like wearing pants too. But when the character was redesigned for the New 52, the look was altered for a new generation of fans, which is code for made worse. This overdesign decided to really lean into the bird theme, with her cloak being given a more feathered look. Kind of an odd choice, but I can get on board with a more detailed cape. What I can't wrap my head around is the weird feather mask covering her face. Not only is it ugly and distracting, but it also has no eye holes. Now, obviously she can see, but the lack of any eyes makes it really hard for the character to emote. The eyes are the window to the soul. Think of how expressive a character like Spider-Man is with his eyes, even if they are technically covered. This design gives us nothing to latch onto and makes Raven look like some boring woman with a grocery bag on her head. Number 6. Lobo's New 52 makeover. Another odd choice made by the folks at DC during the New 52 reboot is what they did to poor Lobo. Lobo is a character that is beloved for his excess. He was designed to be a parody of the 90s grimdark trend in comics, but readers didn't catch the joke and he was beloved by fans and received his own book. In a move that no one saw coming, the New 52 introduced a leaner, more refined version of the character, which seemed to fly in the face of his previous iteration. To add insult to injury, it was revealed that this was the real Lobo, and that the Lobo everyone actually enjoyed was an imposter. Kinda like that Simpsons episode, Principal and the Pauper. If DC was going to go to the trouble of introducing a new version of the character who looks nothing like Lobo and doesn't act like Lobo, why not just make a new character? Was this decision made with the intent of making the least amount of people possible happy? Number 5. Captain America's nomad look. In the fallout of the Watergate scandal, Captain America became disillusioned with the United States and decided that he could no longer be the Star-Spangled Man. He decided to become a man of no country, and instead help save the world as Nomad. He replaced his Captain America costume with a costume that somehow manages to be equal parts way too much and not enough. He wears a simple black spandex bodysuit with yellow gloves, belt, and boots, and a black and yellow cape. Pretty basic, pretty boring. The only thing memorable about this outfit is the extremely deep cut V that goes all the way down to his navel. Granted, compared to his usual outfit, nothing was going to look as interesting, but this feels like a generic dollar store hero, not something befitting of one of the founding Avengers. I guess it makes sense as an outfit when you consider that he was wearing it as a form of protest. Number 4. Wonder Woman's karate makeover. In the late 1960s, the men at DC Comics decided that it was time to give their most iconic female superhero a feminist redesign. Unfortunately, rather than asking any women what they thought, they decided the best way to accomplish this was to take Wonder Woman's powers away. The thought process was that Wonder Woman was beholden to a male god, Zeus, so to make her more independent, she should learn karate to fight her enemies. They would be showing that she was a strong woman who could use hard work and determination to be a hero, rather than relying on powers given to her by a man. What they failed to realize is that Wonder Woman was already a feminist icon, and female readers liked having a powerful character they could look up to. You'll also notice they didn't feel the need to take away Superman's powers in order to prove that he was a capable hero. Instead of her classic red and gold armor with her signature tiara and lasso of truth, she was given a generic white outfit. There's really nothing to say about it other than that. It's boring and a step backwards for her both fashion-wise and as a character. Thankfully, this caught the attention of a real-life feminist icon, Gloria Steinem, who had grown up on the comics. She decried the removal of a strong female role model and began a successful campaign to return Wonder Woman to her full power. When later asked about the changes he made to the character, Denny O'Neil was quoted as saying, "Oh boy, did I screw that up. I thought I was on the side of feminism. Sorry." Number 3. Electric Superman. Being the first superhero who has looked mostly the same since his creation in 1938, Superman is a difficult character to redesign. Whatever look you give him, it needs to be distinctly Superman. Some of his most popular redesigns include the black suit, the 2011 New 52 reboot, which got rid of his red trunks and gave him a high collar, and my personal favorite, the Rebirth outfit, which is just the classic suit with a red and gold belt, allowing the character to keep his classic color scheme while still modernizing the look of it. Despite this, it is never long before Superman ends up in his classic suit, red underwear included. Perhaps his most infamous redesign came in 1998, when the creatives at DC Comics decided to challenge the Man of Steel by giving him new powers. The logic being that having completely new abilities would be like forcing the character to learn to walk again. Superman was given electric energy-based powers, and as a result was given a new look consisting of a blue and white bodysuit with an electrical theme and blue skin. To add to the weirdness, he was split into two beings, with a second Superman having essentially the same suit with a red color palette, playing off the classic Elseworlds story Superman Red and Superman Blue from Superman Volume 1, number 162. It's not a horrible outfit, but it's just too drastic a departure for Superman, with nothing but the S-shield to ground the character in his long history. Number 2. Sue Storm's 90s outfit. Marvel's first family, the Fantastic Four, have had a lot of redesigns over the years, but tend to stick relatively close to their original blue bodysuits. Compared to a lot of superheroines, Sue has usually been able to walk the line with the way she is drawn by artists, so that she is obviously attractive but not usually overly sexualized. Unfortunately, her 90s look doesn't really manage to thread this needle and ends up being more revealing than any story reasons could ever really justify. While most female costumes in comic books are redesigned to be more practical over time, this redesign took away Sue's pants, giving her white stockings and blue garters. Her midriff was completely exposed, and perhaps most notably, the 4 emblem on her chest is cut out to create a number-shaped boob window. This outfit feels like something out of an adult film parody of the Fantastic Four, and is so over-sexualized that it ends up just looking ridiculous, not to mention the bizarre tan lines Sue would end up with. Number 1. Hawkeye's skirt. Usually when a superhero gets a massive redesign, it is to either modernize their look or give them a more dignified look. A great example of this is Robin. For years he had the pantsless pixie boot look, but when Tim Drake took over the mantle, he was given an updated costume that kept the basic look and color scheme, but gave him a more dignified look. Pants. It gave him pants. I like to think of Hawkeye as the anti-Robin, as for a while his costumes got lamer and lamer every few years. His original look was fine. A blue and purple tunic with a purple mask and a bit of a Batman thing going on. To tie the look together, he had a big H on his head, because, you know, Hawkeye starts with an H. This look changed drastically when he took on the superhero identity of Goliath. He basically started wearing a pro wrestling outfit with a weightlifting belt and a weird shoulder strap with a strip of fabric whose only purpose seemed to be to cover his nipples. This is a bad redesign, but his next outfit is even worse, consisting of nothing but an open vest, a headband, and a very short skirt. After a while, they gave up on giving Hawkeye a cool costume, and now he basically just wears a t-shirt with a purple arrow on the chest. Maybe that's for the best.